I don't know how many times I've been approached with the question from my students or from strangers, even chess players, or even I had discussions about the same topic with some professional players, fellow grandmasters, and no one seemed to have one exact answer. And the reason why there is no one exact answer to the question how to learn calculation. There is no theory about it, like a theory of the opening, how should you play opening, what is the best move. Like there is a certain rules about basics of chess. You have to develop, you have to coordinate your pieces, you have to activate your pieces, you have to keep your king safe. We all know this, but no one has ever developed exact theory how to learn calculations. How to learn positions? Yes. How to learn openings? Yes. How to learn endgames? Yes. No one can give one concrete answer how to calculate. Well, I have my own theory about it, my own kind of advices. That's what I want to share. And I think this is one of the very important parts of the game, critical parts of the game. And the reason why there is no exact answer, because it varies from position to position, and there is no one general rule that applies all positions. A lot of players, they make mistake in calculation strictly psychological. They are looking in positions, every position where they calculate, they are skeptical about, and they don't like the position they get after calculations. Some of them have exactly opposite approach. Everything they calculate, they see stars there. They see they are winning everywhere. If they calculate the combination, small combination, they think that's it, that works, and I'm going to go for it. They don't know that every combination may have counter combination. And only way to determine if there is one or not is by calculating. Let me show you one small example. It's very well known position of Tarrasch defense, Tarrasch opening. This position, I'm sure most of the players have seen. Well, in this position, main move is bishop g5. I play bishop e3, but we don't discuss what moves are there. There is also b3 move played by Larsen against Kasparov. Now knight e4 and knight a4, or even bishop b2, bishop f6, and white may go knight a4. Now, this is the position. Now, player with black may calculate variation that gives him great position. I think, oh, I go b5. Knight cannot take on c5 because knight takes c5. And the pawn is pinned because white's bishop will be hanging after dc. Bishop takes b2, and if knight takes c5 is not possible for white, then they have to go knight c3, and I can even win a pawn, or I can take on c3 and go c4, or even I can go c4 right away. So this is good for me, and they go. But you see, b5 is a small combination because knight takes c5 and knight takes c5 variation does not end here. Here, after playing rook c1 or queen c2, white has serious advantage. You see the two knights on the file are hanging. Black loses this minor piece back, and white will have big advantage. So the problem in some calculation, people suffering from syndrome called wishful thinking. They wish everything works, and they, in other words, they don't calculate and think whether it's going to work or not. They have so-called opinion before the calculation. They said it must work. Now let's see how it must work. I see this, oh, it looks good, let's go. But what you have to do, this is optimist point of view on the optimist approach to the position. Pessimistic approach to the position, well, everything I do, any combination I would want to play, it's not going to work. Let's see why it doesn't work. They are both equally wrong approaches. You have to intensify search for yourself and intensify search for your opponent. Now, there is one very famous American grandmaster. Actually, I have great respect and admiration for him, Walter Brown, who was six-time United States champion. But he has, in my opinion, anyway, when I was preparing for him, he has one little problem in his game. What he does, he calculates too much, and when he calculates too much, he has very, very optimistic approach to his calculations. And let me show you what I mean by that. There's a game I played against Walter in New York International Tournament, and let me concentrate on the calculation part of this game. G3, C5, bishop G2, G6, knight F3, bishop G7. We're going to go quickly through this part of the game. C3, knight C6, D4, C takes D, C takes D, D5, knight C3, E6, castle, knight E7, bishop F4, castling, queen D2, knight F5, E3, and here black plays very optimistic plan. Actually, it's nothing wrong with it. F6, trying to trap white's bishop. H4 was played, H6, G4 was played, and now after knight D6, G5. Here, black made very ambitious move. Black played knight D4. Calculation is such that if white takes, which actually was taken, pawn takes, and knight is hanging. If knight moves anywhere, which is not a good position, even moving here, black goes E5, and because the queen is not protected on D2, black has very, very good game. But here, white calculated a little farther than that. So I played here G takes H. Of course, this move was not missed by Walter Brown, but what was missed is I'm sure he anticipated to play bishop h8 in this position, and all the same threats remain. On knight h2, black is going to go e5, having great position. But what was missed, that after g takes h, black cannot play bishop h2, which is in fact very very logical move, because on bishop h8, white does not have to move the knight on f3, but can play queen c2, which completely changes evaluation of the position, and black is nearly lost. Next move, knight is going to d2, e4 becomes terrible weakness, and there is no e5 move. This move nearly wins the game because taking knight will lead to a mate. This is the simple calculation. In the calculation, there is a simple move that was missed by the black. And now position completely changes. So what happened here, after g takes h, what was played, black simply took the knight, and white played in this position h takes g, king takes g7, bishop takes f3, and still black played e5, and white went bishop g3. After e takes d, rook f to d1. Knight e5 was played, bishop g2, and bishop g4. Again, looks very good for black, but ed was played, and my opponent is good enough player to realize that after bishop takes, rook takes, this part actually has nothing to do with calculation. It's simply evaluation of position. Pair of white bishops are very powerful, and after knight has to move somewhere, d5 and d6 will move, supporting by two bishops will make black's position very, very dangerous. So what was played instead? Knight f3 check, bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, and in this position rook d to c1. You see, white has problems with the king, but so is black. So what happened here, quickly we want to go through this part of the game. Rook f7, queen d3, bishop d5, h5. Now we're opening black's king's position too. G takes h, king h2, and after queen e8, rook e1. Rook e1 was played to prevent black from coming queen e4. Rook e1, and after rook e7, rook g1. Now black's position quickly becomes very, very bad. Bishop e4, bishop d6, check, and on king h7, queen g3, and rook d7. Now, what I thought, this is the type of position. It's white has certain attacking position, but how do you play this position? This should be calculated. You see, the critical squares are g6 square, g7 square. So that's what white should be concentrated on taking advantage of. So after rook d7, rook a to e1, queen e6. Now black wants to bring the rook into the game somewhere on e8 or g8, and here it's strictly calculation. There is no general principle of the next move that white made, but it's a very powerful move. It's strictly calculation. I already told you g6, g7 square, and maybe g8 square. Those three squares are critical. So bishop b8 totally disconnects black's rook on a8 and makes their position hopeless. After bishop b8, queen e8 was played. Rook takes e4. Of course, queen takes e4 is not possible because it's a quick mate. Queen h8 mate followed by queen takes f6, whichever piece black interposes on h7. So what happened on rook takes e4, queen takes b8, pinning black's queen, white's queen, and after rook e5, game is over because, as I said, g6, g7, and g8 squares are targets. g7 and g8 are protected, but g6 is not. And also white is threatening rook takes h5. So here black is getting mated. Fe was played, queen g6 check, and after king h8, queen h6 check, followed by mate. That was... Now, what can we say about this game? When you have wishful thinking, then you reach the position, that looks like very good for you, and you accomplish what you want. Then you know that once you cornering your opponent, if you like some position, if position is very good for you, that obviously it's not very good for your opponent. And you know your opponent will intensify the search how to get out of it. So his calculation will be more intensive than yours. You may have wishful thinking, and your opponent will have survival instinct. And survival instinct is a lot more realistic than wishful thinking. And that's why you should calculate from both sides. And that's the only way to find a right solution. Now, let me show you one very, very interesting game that was played by me, and I analyzed this game. It's one of my best games, but I am going to show you the calculation. The reason why I take my game, because I was part of it and I knew how my thinking was in calculation, and I want to share with you. It's a little difficult calculation. It looks like very long, very difficult, very complicated, but it's not. It's not, and I want to explain it to you, and you have to look at it very, very carefully. So let's start with a middle game part of this position. Well, this is position. Actually, it's one of the most exciting, maybe, combinations and calculations for. One very, very important ingredient of combination is what? Intuition. Intuition is so important that you have to know. Without intuition, there is no calculation. Because intuition helps you to concentrate on a certain, to narrowing your search in what variations you should play. This is my game against Vitaly Tseshkovsky, Russian Grandmaster, and in this position, this is easily won position for me. I could have played e4 simply, and followed by rook g1. I have overwhelming attack, but I made a bad mistake. I went rook g1 and knight takes e3. I simply blundered that move because you see my rook is pinned to my king. So I went queen h6, knight f5, queen takes e6, king h8. Now here we start calculations. First of all, before you calculate, you have to see what area you calculate in. You see the bishop on b2, rook on g1, They are both aiming on g7 square. Knight is also aiming towards black's king. Rook also aiming towards black's king. Obviously, white's idea is to find some mating threats. On the other hand, rook on f3 is badly pinned. So what can we do? Knight g6 check, h takes g, and rook h3 doesn't work for that reason that this rook is pinned. So this is the thinking we go. So now we try to make knight g6 work, and also we concentrate on g7 square. So first I found the tactical shot I think was very interesting shot. I was already short of time. Rook takes g7, but I want you to concentrate on this little later stage, like a move or two later after this, and then we're gonna see some fascinating way to calculate. Rook takes g7. Okay, the way my calculation went. Now here is I am thinking like if I was playing this game now. Here the way calculation works. So I have, remember, I have limited amount of time. I don't think king takes g7, which is actually the best move in this position. I did not think then this would have been possible because there are countless discovered check, and black's king seems like gonna be mated almost immediately. That's exactly the way my opponent thought about it, and he also thought that black is totally lost here, so he ruled out this possibility, taking with the king. He totally ruled out queen takes g7, and obviously you should rule it out because then black is getting mated instantly. Because queen, after queen takes g7, rook on f3 is not pinned, knight g6 check leaves black only one legal move, and then rook h3 followed by mate. Now this is easy to calculate. Now you should be able to calculate this part, that queen takes g7. You see, you know queen is disabled because it's going to be pinned, and after knight takes g6, this is very elementary combination. And obviously, when my opponent was also short of time, obviously he wants to take it with the knight. And the key of my combination was king g1 move here. To get out of the pin, well, knight cannot take the queen because it's a very simple checkmate in two moves, which is double check, only move, and checkmate. And here we are both short of time, and my opponent played only move that seems logical in this position. You see the devastating power of this bishop on diagonally. My opponent played rook d4, and that's the part I want you to start calculating from. Now we reached position where I quickly calculate long variation. But amazingly, even though it's long, like 8 moves long, it's very simple to calculate. Now, frequently I've been asked question, how many moves ahead can you calculate? Well, there is no answer to this question, because there are positions that's very hard to calculate 3 moves ahead, because position is extremely complex and there are many different continuations by your opponent and many different trees, and none of them leads to easy to assess position, and they all lead to unclear position. You can calculate, yeah, maybe it's easy to calculate, but it's not easy to make decision. What is the better choice? Here, I quickly calculate long variation, and let me do that first without moving pieces. I want to play knight g6 check, and let's see the consequences of it. Knight g6 check. Pawn is gonna take. Then we have rook h3 check. You have to visualize this position. I'm not moving the pieces. Knight g6, hg, rook h3 check. Only legal move will be knight h5. Then we play queen takes pawn on g6. Now, let's play this part of the combination, which is 3 moves. Knight g6, hg, rook h3, knight h5, only move, and queen takes g6. Now, memorize this position. White is threatening rook takes h5, checkmate. And the only move, you see this, such an obvious threat, and obviously black cannot do anything with this knight. Black cannot protect the knight with the queen because white simply takes it, and the rook cannot protect because we take the rook, and rook g8 will be also checkmate. So we know one thing only here, so that in this position black has only moved queen g7. Now let's go back. You visualize this position. Now let's go back to the original position. Now, knight g6, hg, rook h3, queen h5, queen takes g6, queen g7. Now, at that position, you take rook takes knight. We're going to display it all on the board, but you have to see it before I move in there. King has to go to g8, after which white has no more checks. White has to exchange queens, and you remember there now hold rook down, but then white is going to play rook from h5, take on c5. Now, how is this possible? Let's go on. Now, let's display the second stage of the position. Now, this is easy to calculate. It may seem difficult for you, but if you put this position after watching this DVD, if you put this particular position and start calculating consequences of knight g6 check, you will see that, hey, that's not that difficult. Knight g6 check, h takes g, only move, rook h3, only move, queen takes g6, and as we mentioned, queen g7 is the only move, rook takes check, king g8. You see, this is all forced. Now we have to exchange and take the pawn on c5, even though we are a rook down. White has some advantage. Rook takes f4. Rook must be protected. Might as well take the pawn. Rook takes d5 doesn't do any good because of knight c6. But now what we can do, rook c7 check, king up. Now we can take the rook. Rook takes bishop, take the knight, and rook takes d3. This is a long combination, but believe me, it's not difficult. it's a trained eye. Well, you have to train on visualizing position. It's a lot more difficult if you have problem visualizing position. But every move was made from both sides is absolutely forced. So position that we get is this. Now I could have gotten to this position and I assessed that position would be a draw, the game. And it is a drawn position because white only has one extra pawn in rook ending and they are both rook pawns, so this is a draw. Now let's go once more. This is very important stage of the game. Now we quickly set up this position again with king on h8, pawn on f4, knight on e5, pawn d3, queen e6, pawn, knight on g7, and rook on f8. So in this position, I could have played knight g6. So it took me a few seconds to see that position, and well, maybe a minute, and I didn't have much more time. And I had to assess, to go there, which it would be a certain draw, and there was no doubt in my mind that my opponent would have seen every move by method of elimination. I mean, and elimination, he did not have to eliminate two moves. Every time he had only move or maybe two possibilities, and one of them was disaster, and the second move was easy to choose. That was very, very easy to play for my opponent, and game would have been a draw. That was one opportunity for me, and the second opportunity for me was to go to a different position and play for attack. So we have two choices: to make a draw or to take on d4 and go queen h6. That's what I chose, because now we are piece down. I'm down a knight, but my pieces are extremely well placed. All kinds of rook h3, rook g3 possibility, knight g6, and I thought I would have sufficient compensation for a piece, and I do. So I chose second continuation. Now, I would have chosen this if I didn't see that the other continuation definitely leaves me no chances to win the game. So I went for this position, and after queen h6, king g8, rook h3 was played, knight f5, queen e6, king g7, knight d7. Now it's very easy for white to play. White is creating threats. They played knight d7, totally disconnected both pieces, and very difficult for black to find an answer here. You see that if rook goes anywhere there, then queen takes f5 followed by rook h7 will be devastating. Rook f7 is absolutely not acceptable because of rook takes h7. King takes, queen takes f7, and that's where calculation may end, because king has to come up and we take the knight, unless they go knight g7, which knight f6 wins black's queen. So that leaves black no choice, and it's very difficult to defend this position. So my opponent went queen c8. After knight takes f8, well, now neither one of us calculated all the way through, but we both intuitively felt queen takes f8 was bad. And it is bad because, first of all, we have queen d7 trying to take on h7, and on queen e7 we simply take the knight on f5. and otherwise knight on a7 is hanging. So black is totally lost. Queen takes f8 is not a good, not acceptable option. Queen c1 check was played. King g2, and here queen d2 check was played. And after king f3, position is totally lost for black. The game was adjourned, and once the game is adjourned, calculation is a lot easier because you have several hours to analyze, and it's very simple win for white. Queen takes d3 check, king g4, knight e3 check. Every move is forced. King g5, and you see there is a mating threat. There is mating threat. So only move king takes f8, and white wins easily with rook h6, threatening rook f6 with a checkmate. This is already it's not really advanced calculation. It's a little more difficult, but it's very easy to see that black is totally lost. Actually, what could have been played: king g7, rook f6, threatening checkmate, and it's resignable for black. Now, the calculation, sometimes people are not confident when they calculate. Oh my God, this is too long. It's something has to be wrong there. Let me not go there. Every time you refuse to make very competitive move, that you give up little piece of position. You give up something. I'm not saying that every time you have a chance to make competitive move, you have to do it. Absolutely not. Well, but you have to calculate. Calculation is the absolutely most important part of the chess game, and I wouldn't believe anyone if they say that I am wrong. Now, let me show you a lot simpler calculation that can occur in a pawn ending. Here is the position. Here is the position. White is going this way. Black is going this way. Black is going this way. Now, as most of the pawn endings, let me show you about something. Let me tell you about pawn endings. Pawn endings, I would say about 95 to 99% of the time, should be and can be calculated all the way to the end. And that rule goes for weaker players and for stronger players. For players rated 1400, and for players on the highest level of the game. White has to play and make a draw. White has an extra pawn, but you see this H pawn is blocked by white's king, and the F pawn is blocked by the black's king. So black's pawn is not blocked. It can go all the way. So you see, we see now that if white goes f4, white is gonna lose the game because black is gonna go a5. On f5, black is gonna go a4, f6, a3, f7, a2, and when we go h7, we get checkmated. And on king h7, also black is going to win easily by making the queen. So f4 is not a good move. f4 is not a good move because a5 wins. We have an idea. Maybe we go f3. And amazingly, after a5, it's a draw. Because f4, a4, f5, a3, f6, a2, and now white goes h7. Anything black does here will end in a stalemate. Position is an easy draw. What can we say here? Is f3 the solution? No. As we said, f4 is losing, and so is f3. f3 is losing also, because then black goes a6. It's only calculation. It's very easy calculation though. Now f4, a5. Now we reach the same position that we had if we have played f4 and black went a5. This is lost for white. f5, a4, f6, a3, f7, a2, and white is lost. So which means white loses because if white moves pawn on one square, black moves on one square, and if white moves pawn on two square, black moves on two squares. So here comes simple logic. You have to have analytical ability and calculating ability. You see, computers don't have it. Computers don't have analytical ability, but their overwhelming ability of calculation overcomes this problem. We cannot calculate countless variations per second, so we know that when we make one square move, black makes one square. So the solution is we make h7 move. And now, how many squares black moves this pawn? We do the opposite. If black moves on 2, we move on 1. And if black moves on 1, we move on 2. And there is an opportunity for you to calculate this. Of course, I can quickly show you, and I will, but from here now, just take a minute break and calculate, is that true what I just said? If black moves on 1, we move on 2, and it's a draw? If black moves on 2 squares, we move on 1, and it's a draw. Yes, it is the truth. That's how it's going to end in the game. And if black goes 1, we move 2, and we don't want to waste too much time. I'm going to show you why it's a draw. And you see it's a draw with black to move. And if black moves 2 squares, we move 1, and it's also a draw. And it's black's move. And this is a draw. This position can be reached whether we moved f4 or f3, doesn't matter. But if we moved first with f-pawn, we would have gotten this position with white to move. And if white moves, white gets mated. And since we played correctly, it's black's move now, and therefore it's a draw. The same type of position and same approach. Strictly calculation and nothing else. Here is the position. White goes this way. Now, as I said, this is pawn ending. 95 to 99%, I said this can be calculated all the way through. And the reason why I'm saying 95 to 99, it's because sometimes in pawn ending, there may be reached position, pawn ending can transfer to a queen's ending, where result is not 100% predictable. And that's why we leave this between 1 and 5% to unclear endings. Here, white to play and to win. Now, this pawn goes to queen. And these two pawns, black pawns, they're going to queen. Now, white needs 1, 2, 3 moves to make a queen. Black needs 1, 2, 3 moves to make a queen. Now, here are the white's ideas. First, we have to get the ideas. Obviously, we have to. So that means if we have 3 moves to queen, and my opponent has 3 moves to queen, I have to be able to mate him, to checkmate him, or to win his queen. Here is the possibility. If black goes here, d7. If black goes here, d8 queen. And black makes queen. But then we have check and checkmate. Is it that simple? Of course not. This move is not going to win. D7, king c7 is not going to win because black pushes this g pawn. And after d7, g2, d8 queen, g1 queen, there is a check, but there is no checkmate because black's queen is here. So that didn't work. Now white cannot win. White can probably make a draw, but white cannot win. Now let's go back. It's very easy to calculate, like a 3-4 moves. And typical mistake can be made by any chess player. If they go here, they see pawn goes here, they see a mate, and they stop. They immediately stop the search. No. You have, the way to think is this. When you play here, your opponent, unless it's a very weak player, he will see that you want to promote queen and checkmate him. So he will see how to protect critical b6 square from being checkmated. That's, once they figured it out, they will make g3 and there is no checkmate. So then your search continues. Then you say, wait a minute, now let me go king c8. Now if pawn goes to g3, we go d7. On g2 we make d8 queen, and when black makes queen there is a checkmate. This is a checkmate. And again, you may see this variation and go quickly for it, but that will be wrong too. Because, and again, by playing king c8, you are practically indicating your opponent will see that you want to make queen on d8, and when he makes one of those queens, you're going to go queen a5 checkmate. So this, your opponent will see it, and that's why if you go king c8, that move does not win because f3 will be played by black. d7, f2, d8, f1, and there is no checkmate. In fact, queen a5 check will lose the game because now queens exchanged and white loses. So white is going to have to play queen d7 check, take on g4 and make a draw. So we see that neither one of these moves wins. So what is the winning move? The winning move is d7. You see that in one case black must push g-pawn, and in the other case black had to move the f-pawn. But now after d7 you leave yourself opportunity to go king c7 with the idea to checkmate black's king on b6, or go king c8 with the opportunity to mate black's king on a5. And depending on which pawn black chooses, you make your decision. If black chooses g3, then obviously you will go queen c8, g2, d8 queen, g1 queen, and queen a5. And accordingly, if black pushes the f pawn, then you see b6 square is available. We go king c7, f2, d8 queen, f1 queen, queen b8 check, and queen b6. Now, those are very, very elementary calculations, as there is a rule in pawn ending. Every pawn ending, it has to be calculated all the way through. And that's how you conduct your calculation. You have to use logic and the calculating ability to foreseeing the final position. There is interesting position that is where is black's move, and black has a choice to play rook takes d7. We have to calculate the pawn ending. Rook takes d7, king takes d7. Is this pawn ending a draw, or white has some winning chances? The answer to this question is white is winning here. It sounds strange, but it's an easy win for white because they go king g5, and now they want to play king f6. Okay, let me explain something. If king goes to f6, white's winning formula requires no calculation. It's very easy. There are some positions that is absolutely wrong to calculate anything. You see, this position is very static, and you see simple way of winning black's pawns. Like if king was here, do we need to calculate? No, we take this pawn, then we take this pawn, and then we take the third pawn. So here is almost the same. We win very easily. We will go f4. It doesn't matter where black's king stays. Then we go f5, threatening to take this pawn on g6. When pawn takes, we take on f5, then come back king g5 and take h pawn. And it's going to be an easy win. Well, but in this position, we went king g5, and if we go king f6, that's exactly what is going to happen. Black can go king e7 or king e6. And white gets its king on g5 and f6 and wins no matter what. Now, if king e6 or king e7, there are two opportunities. That's where we calculating. What we want to do when black's king is on e7, we want to go f5. And when pawn takes on f5, we take on f5, come back and take on h5. So then we are easily winning. So if king goes to e6, we go f4, and we easily accomplished this mission. Now, black has no other move but king e7. We go f5, and it's all over. So if black goes king e7, however, now f4 is a mistake, because black goes king e6 and game cannot be won, because on f5 pawn is going to take, and on king takes h5 king f6, and white is not winning. So the correct continuation on the king e7, we already said when king is on e7 our pawn has to be on f5. So it's simple calculation. We go f3. Now we know if king goes back, we already win this by playing f4 and f5. If on king e7 we go f3 and on king e6 we go f4. This calculation is very, very simple. It's like calculating how much is 2 plus 2. But you cannot go strictly by calculations. You have to convince yourself that if you go f4 and f5, exchange these pawns, you win because you take on h5. Now you know what you want, what your goal is, which direction you're going, and now you calculate how to make f5 move with king on e7 or on f8. One of these two positions we need, this or this, with black to move. And that's why on king e7 we play f3, and on king e6 we play f4, which gives us an easily winning position. This is very, very easy to calculate again. Those are the easy ways to calculate. Now, there are some position calculations very, very frequently goes together with intuition. Now, you need to have an intuition. For successful chess, you need to have an intuition, intuitively feel that you have good position, you have, that's where I should conduct my attack. Then you see logically that your pieces are well placed, and if all this done properly, the calculation will play decisive role. And you know, when you have a calculation, it has to be very logical. In other words, you have to look for combination or calculate variations in the area that's superior for you. So you know this is where my advantage is. So that's the direction I should be looking for. Now let me show you one of my games played 45 years ago. 45 years ago, some people even don't live that long, but that's how long ago I was played against very famous then Grandmaster Bondarevsky. I played Karl Khan. I was junior, like, I don't know, and in 62 I was 18 years old. And after knight c3, d takes e, knight takes e4, knight f6. This is memorable game for me because the calculation was on, the combination was very simple, but it was logic involved in this game, calculation involved, and intuition involved. So we're going to see it now. Queen e2, knight takes e4. Of course, knight d7 will be foolish because of checkmate in 1. Knight takes e4, queen takes e4, knight d7, bishop c4, knight f6, queen e2, bishop f5, d4, e6, c3, bishop g6, castle, bishop e7, knight e5, castle, h4. Now white wants to go g4 and h5, because black cannot go h6, which damages their pawn structure. So after h4, bishop e4, g4, bishop d5, bishop d3, threatening c4 now. c5 was played, d takes c, now knight d7, knight takes d7, queen takes d7, c4, bishop c6, b4. We're going quickly through this stage of the game because that's not where we want to what we want to concentrate on. After b4, bishop f6 was played, rook b1, rook fd8, rook d1, queen c7, bishop e3, bishop a4, rook d to c1, bishop d4, bishop g5, queen g3 checked. It might have been missed by my opponent. King f1, queen h3 check, king e1, bishop takes f2, and obviously black wants to play rook takes d3, king d2, and after bishop takes f2 and king d2. Now I played bishop takes h4. This is strictly intuition. Bishop takes d8, rook takes d8. We see we have two strong bishops and all very active pieces, and black's rook's placed passively, and king is in danger. Well, that's part that called intuition. I don't think any of you watchers here can have a problem sacrifice this exchange. So what you practically sacrifice is next to nothing. You have bishop and a pawn for a rook. So the material deficit is minimal. So what happened? Rook h1 was played, and now is the combination. It's long combination, like 6 or 7 moves, but it's, I would say, 6 moves. But every move made by my opponent was absolutely forced. There are no sub-variations, which narrows significantly narrows the level of white's opportunity. So significantly narrows the amount of variations we have to calculate. It's one straight line all the way. Rook takes d3 check. Every move is forced. Queen takes d3. Bishop g5 check. Now if we calculate, how many moves can we calculate for white? White has only one move only, king c3, because queen has to be protected. On king e2, black goes queen g2 check, and that picks up white's rook on h1. So you see here, only move. Now bishop f6 check. Again, the only move. Now queen g2 check. Here are two moves, queen e2 and king e3. And queen e2 was played because king e3 is forced mate. Because this check, it's very easy to calculate. It's all diagonals, all geometrical. King d4, queen f2 check, and you see on king e2, this is next to the mate, or bishop c2, and on king back, bishop f6. It's no rocket science here. It's very simple. So in this position, my opponent played queen e2, and it's also very simple. Bishop g5 check, king d3, and now bishop c2 check. That's not a difficult move. It's very thematic, very simple calculation. which I saw before I sacrificed the rook. Well, some people may sacrifice that rook on d3 intuitively that there should be something. Yeah, I don't blame these people, and if I had no time at all, I might have done it too. But I had the luxury here to calculate all the way through. But when you calculate all the way through, it just confirms that your intuition was proper and correct. And after bishop c2, white resigns, because after queen takes c2, queen f3, check, only legal move, and bishop f6, checkmate. This is when we have in those positions. Actually, here is the position where exchange was sacrificed, the second exchange. Here is the position, and a lot of people may sacrifice it intuitively, knowing that bishops are better than the rooks, and after bishop g5 we have to have mating attack. That's good, but if you want to exercise in calculations, just put it back here, and I'm telling you here that rook takes d3 wins. Without moving pieces from here, you can calculate, and all the way through you will see rook takes d3, queen takes d3, bishop g5 check, and all the way through white never has an opportunity to deviate from the main variation. That's actually very easy example of the combination. And to the conclusion, I want to bring you some theoretical position, theoretical that it was actually very actuality several years ago, when some of the theory was created before the computer era, and we weren't able to analyze all positions all the way through. But then computers helped us to find the truth in more complex variations and change some common evaluations and some common assessment of very well-known theoretical positions. Actually, this is accelerated Drakan. There's something put on my theoretical DVD. Knight f3, g6, d4, cd, knight takes d4, knight c6. We're going to go quickly through this stage of the game, which is very well known theory. Bishop c4, queen a5, castle, castle, bishop b3, d6, h3, bishop d7, f4, queen h5, knight f3, b5, queen d3, a5, a3, b4. Now, this move was severely criticized by a lot of players, and they said because after knight e2, with the idea knight g3, black's queen is in a lot of trouble, and that's why we don't recommend you to play b4. In number of games, on the highest level, I have seen those games, everybody played a4 in this position, and nobody played b4. I kind of analyzed, and I was a little skeptical, and I thought b4. I just want to make sure, and it's part of my character. Everything that theory says it's good, I challenge. Of course, my challenge is not successful majority of the time, but this is one of those challenges where I challenge the theory, and I was successful. of course, you have to challenge theory almost always. This, at least if you don't refute the theory, you're gonna find out a lot about this position, and you will know very well these positions. But if you are successful, then even more use from your analysis. After knight takes e2, I was able to shatter the very well known evaluation of this position. Here, black has pawn takes a3 move that is shattering this evaluation. Now, if white takes on a3, this position should not be analyzed, because if white takes on a3, black simply has a better position after playing a4, and queen is not in trouble anymore. Next move will be queen a5. This is not a problem. If black takes with the rook, it's also not a problem. Black has a better position after knight b4, and then queen b5 or bishop b5. So the only way white may do okay here, if they try to play the way it was recommended, what the idea was, if they are consistent and go after black's queen. And after knight g3, I think black has an advantage. Here starts the calculation. We play a takes b. Of course, I did not calculate all of it by myself. I did it with the help of computer, but you need to feed ideas to the computer. And now white has 3 moves. They have a move rook a4, just to get out. Rook a4 is with knight on a2. Rook b1, or just rook a4, rook b1. Rook b1, actually, it's a bad move, because we simply go knight b4. After knight is on g3 and rook b1. Rook a4, and knight takes h5. Here are 3 continuations for white, and I am convinced black is better in every one of them. Rook a4 first. Let's look at it. Rook a4 is bad move because of the queen h6. We have to move. This is one opportunity. Queen h6. After f5, we will go here. Attack, queen is hanging. We go g5. Now white has bishop takes g5, and looks like our queen is trapped. But then we go knight e5. If knight takes e5, we have queen takes g5. So the situation is, if black takes queen, they lose after knight takes d3. You see the rook on a4 is hanging in the end. But otherwise, black is threatening to take white's knight with a check and then take the bishop. And after queen e3, knight takes f3. And amazingly, there is no way white can successfully recapture on f3. If rook takes, we're going to have a queen, new queen on b1. If queen takes, the bishop is hanging. And if pawn takes, we take on h3. So at this point, white is lost, simply lost. So that we covered, by doing this, we covered the continuation of g5, of rook a4. So rook a4 is not good. Here is the position. Knight is on g3. So rook a4 is not good in this position. So rook b1, one option. Rook b1. And the third move, simply knight takes h5. So rook b1, what do we do on rook b1? We go simply knight b4. Now we are trying to escape with the queen, queen b5. There is only one move white can make, knight takes h5. We play knight takes d3. White wins a piece, knight takes f6, bishop takes f6, and c takes d. Position is very bad for white. White has an extra piece. Black goes a4, and after bishop a2, a3. In my opinion, black is lost because bishop e6 is coming, and these two pawns are worth a lot more than a piece. Again, white is in a bad shape. Now let's get to the third and final option, and the most natural option for black, which is for white, which is simply taking the queen. But then we take on a1, making queen. Of course, white doesn't want to play knight f6 check first because queen is going to take on f6, so they have to take the queen. Now we take on h5, and let's calculate the material. What black has: knight, rook, and the pawn for the queen, which is materially it's almost equal. They have very strong pass pawn on a5. They have bishop pair that supports this pawn. Knight b4 and a4 may be played, and black is doing really very well. So whole variations is very good for black. Now there is a very well-known evaluation of very well-known position was shattered, questioned, and refuted. Now what we learn from this: so computers you can use computers to help your calculations. How? Well, try to get positions where calculation involved. Try to calculate by yourself. Then check it with a computer. And if computer gives you different evaluation, try to see where you missed what move. And how do you conduct your calculation? First, you see where we should have some tactical shots and what we should have, where do we calculate. You calculate only continuations that seem, has to be, every calculation should be based on something, should be based on activity of your pieces or pass pawn. It can be many different criteria to go by, and more active pieces, better concentration, advanced pawn, opponent's weak king. But you must have, it cannot be based on your killer instinct or on your wishful thinking or on your aggressiveness, on your mood. You have to have very healthy basis. If you don't have it, and if you don't want to follow it, so this DVD is not for you. You shouldn't follow, then you should play maybe different game. So, but every calculation today can be logically explained, every tactical shot, every calculation, and this is all I know about how to calculate and what my calculation is based on. Good luck to you, and I think this what you just watched, you're gonna use it to your benefit. Good luck.